palace were nervous. The servants of the palace were nervous.
所罗门的这个殿，他刚开始所罗门心里面会有一些忧虑。
The Bible doesn't specifically say that, but I can't imagine they felt anything else.
所以圣经并没有讲所罗门在他殿中为什么忧虑。
Don't get me wrong. King David had been a wonderful king.
在当时大卫王是一个非常优秀的国王。
He was merciful even to his enemies.
大卫甚至对他的敌人也充满了怜悯。
He was wise.
他是有智慧的。
And most important of all, he followed God with all of his heart.
最重要的是，大卫王他遵守耶和华所命令的法律。
Of course, that was why he was merciful and wise.
这就是为什么大卫王是如此的有智慧。
And even more than that, he followed God faithfully enough that God promised him an eternal dynasty.
大卫王是如此的对神有信心，并且遵守他的话，所以神耶和华就赐他给他一个应许，让他在王位他的国直到永远。
No matter what David's sons did,
无论大卫王的儿子做什么，
there would always be a man to sit on the throne of Israel of David's line.
所以无论他的儿子怎么样，神允许大卫的后裔也坐在大卫的国王的这个国度里。
But King David was old.
但是大卫王当时已经年纪老迈。
Now, he was only about 70, but he lived a very hard life.
尽管他当时只有70岁，但是他所经历了很多的艰难和困苦。
Everyone could see soon he would be gone.
很多人能看到他的生命不久将要离世。
To make matters worse, there was more than one son of David that was vying for kingship.
但是更加令人担心的是，他的儿子当中有很多的有些王子的心是不可测。
David had wanted Solomon to be king.
大卫想让他的儿子所罗门王继承他的王位。
But Solomon was not the oldest in the family.
但是所罗门并不是大卫的长子，而是他的几个长兄。
His older brother Adonijah decided that he should be king.
所以他的长兄亚多尼亚希望自己成为大卫的继承人。
This is why the servants of the palace would have been nervous.
这就是为什么在所罗门的宫殿里，他们那里充满了一些担心、忧虑。
Who would be king, and would he be a wise man?
谁将是以色列的国王？谁将会是以色列的智者？
Transitions of power are often very fragile times.
很多的时候，在政权的交接的时候，却是这个国家最脆弱的时候。
What often happens is that when the next man comes in power, he executes a lot of people just because they were associated with the previous man.
很多的时候，那个王位的继承者会除掉他的政敌，就是因为这些人对他产生了威胁。
And while God had promised that there would always be a son of David to sit on the throne, this isn't guaranteed that that son of David would always do what was good and right.
所以神尽管他承诺大卫王的后裔会继续成为以色列的王国的国度的君王，但是他并没有承诺大卫王的后裔是能够辨别是非。
If he was a fool, God would chasten him.
如果他们的大卫的子孙是愚拙的，神也会惩罚。
I am today preaching an overview of a large section of Scripture, 1 Kings chapter 1 to 4.
所以我们今天的信息将跨越列王记的从第一章到第4章的整个的这段的历史事实。
This is the beginning of the reign of King Solomon.
这是一个所罗门世纪的开端。
I won't be reading every verse because there isn't sufficient time.
我们没有足够的时间把每一节的经文都读一遍。
But I encourage you on your own to read those 4 chapters to see where I got this information.
我们希望大家在从看以后或者将来能够读这4章的经文，能够更多的了解圣经里所启示的。
Anyway, back to this conspiracy Adonijah wanted to be king.
所以我们回到开头的时候 所罗门的忧虑，就是因为他的兄弟亚多尼亚有这样的一个对王位篡夺的一个密谋。
As king, Adonijah would have been a disaster.
对于亚多尼亚来说，有可能也是一个很可悲的结局。
He had exalted himself and just on his own said, I will be king.
所以他就对众人说：“他说我将会成为国王的继承人。”
And well, he was not a man of good character, in part because of his father.
因为他的父亲的原因他并不是一个王位的理想的继承者。
David may have been a good and wise king, but as a father, not so much.
但是对于大卫来讲，他中间有好有坏，但是对于亚多尼亚来讲却不是如此。
And never at any time had King David rebuked his son Adonijah and told him he shouldn't do that.
所以大卫王曾经对他的儿子说了一些事情，你们不能做某些事情。
And Adonijah was following in the steps of his late older brother Absalom. He was also a handsome man. Absalom was his full brother.
亚多尼亚在他们的弟兄当中，他生得非常的俊美，但是他和他的一些弟兄在王位的继承上是创了异己。
He prepared this huge entourage to follow him in this big ceremony, and it seemed to be working.
所以他和他的拥护者在某一天就举行了一个盛大的庆典。
See, some of the important men of David's administration followed him.
所以在大卫的政权当中，有很多的重臣和臣仆都跟随了亚多尼亚。
Joab, the brutal, self-serving commander of David's army.
大卫手下的军队的元帅就是约雅，也是其中的一个。
And Abiathar the priest who had been with David from the beginning.
另外还有一个就是大祭司叫亚比亚他一直跟随大卫王作为他的祭司，也是其中的一。
Well, Solomon was at this point too young and not officially king, so there's not a lot he could do about it.
所以当所罗门看到这样的景象的时候，因为他自己非常的年幼，所以他觉得非常的力不从心，无可奈何。
But Nathan the prophet and his mother Bathsheba noticed this, and they have to somehow get David to notice that there's a problem.
所以所罗门的母亲巴示巴就看到了景象，他就心中的担忧到底怎么样来解决这个问题。
See, when Absalom had tried to overthrow David, David was able to run away, but that's not possible anymore.
当亚沙龙在逼迫大卫的时候，大卫就逃走了。但是对所罗门来说，这件事情他没法去做。
It's even a job to be able to get through to him that there is a problem.
所以对所罗门来讲，他甚至没有想出任何的办法来解决这个问题，来摆脱他现在的困境。
But they are successful.
但是最终有一件成功的事情发生。
King David understands that there's yet another attempt on his life and now the life of his son.
所以大卫看到了有一件事情他必须要去做，使他的国度能够传承。
And he organizes something that works.
所以大卫王就帮助所罗门做了一些事情。
He calls for Solomon to ride his own mule.
所以他让所罗门去骑了一个大卫的坐骑。
Solomon enters with David's official recommendation for kingship.
所以所罗门所做的事情是大卫王能够在官方正式宣布他作为继承人的这么一个仪式。
They gather David's loyal supporters and they blow the trumpet to proclaim Solomon is king and Solomon sits on David's throne.
所以他们就聚集了一群人在这个大卫的坐骑的边上，在所罗门的周围大声的呼叫，并且吹着号角说：“这个是我们新的国王，大卫的继承人。”
Well, it works. Adonijah and his guests hear about it and then they break up and flee in terror.
所以这件事情就是使得亚多尼亚和他的拥护者们甚至害怕，他们就听到了这些欢呼声就逃走了。
And now here's where everyone will be waiting what happens next.
所以这个时候， 大家就在等待着下一步到底发生什么。
Adonijah does deserve to die.
是不是亚多尼亚，值得因为他的谋反罪，值得去面对死刑？
And now Solomon is king.
现在所罗门是王，
So Adonijah, quite understandably, is terrified and flees to the altar to try to find some place safe.
所以亚多尼亚就心中非常的害怕，他想逃到一个安全的地方，能够保护自己的生命。
So people tell King Solomon, this is where your brother is.
所以有人就去告诉所罗门说：“嘿，你的兄弟亚多尼亚在某个地方。”
Will Solomon exact every ounce of justice, or will he prove to be a merciful king?
这时候，所罗门必须要显示是否他对亚多尼亚有一定的怜悯，还是一个严厉的君王。
He proves to be an astonishing merciful king.
最后，所罗门证明了他是一个有智慧的、充满怜悯的。
Adonijah has shown no sign of actually changing his mind. He just doesn't want to die.
所以亚多尼亚对他来说，他唯一想到的就是求生。
But Solomon's reply is that if he will show himself a worthy man, not a hair of his head will fall to the ground.
所罗门对亚多尼亚说：“如果你做一个正直的人，你的身上一根头发都不会掉在地上。”
King Solomon sends messengers to tell him that, and that gets him to come down from the altar, and he goes home, and we think the problem is solved.
所以所罗门王就把这个信息告诉了亚多尼亚。亚多尼亚当时是躲在了圣殿当中，他抱住了这个祭坛的一角，所以听到这个话，他就从里面下来。
That is a very, very quick summary of 1 Kings chapter 1.
这就是第一章的一个大概的一个总结。
And at this point, the story isn't over, but we're given a little bit of a break, and the narrator, whoever wrote 1 Kings, stops to tell us something else.
在第一章的结束，作者在那里开启了下一段的故事。
At some point near the time when David died, he called Solomon before him and gave him one last charge.
所以在大卫临终以前，他把所罗门叫到他的面前，给了他一系列的指示。
1 Kings chapter 2, beginning in verse 2.
在列王记上的第2章，这里记载了这些话。
When David's time to die drew near, he commanded Solomon his son, saying, actually that's verse 1, I am about to go the way of all the earth. Be strong and show yourself a man, and keep the charge of the Lord your God, walking in his ways, and keeping his statutes, his commandments, and his rules, as is written in the law of Moses, that you may prosper in all you do and wherever you turn, that the Lord may establish his word that he spoke to me concerning me, saying, if your sons pay close attention to their way, to walk before me in faithfulness with all their heart and with all their soul, you shall not lack a man on the throne of Israel.
所以大卫给他的临终的所罗门的遗言，他说：“我现在要走世人必走的路，你当坚强，做大丈夫，谨守耶和华你的神所吩咐的，遵行他的道，按摩西律法所写的，遵守他的律法、诫命、典章和法度。这样，无论你做什么，无论你往哪里去，都可以亨通。这样，耶和华必坚立他所有关我的话，说：如果你的子孙谨慎自己所行的，一心一意、诚诚实实行在我面前。” 就不断有人做以色列的王位。
This was the key point.
这个是最关键的一点。
See, even if Solomon showed some kind of cleverness, unless he also followed God, his kingdom would fail.
所以，尽管所罗门他有智慧，但是如果他不遵守耶和华所赐的法律和典章，他依然会守不住他的王位。
The line of David could continue. But Solomon himself would only enjoy the blessings of this promise from God if he actually followed God.
大卫王最终生命可以结束，但是所罗门王必须遵守神赐给他的典章。
But David also gives him some specific instructions, some loose ends David was not able to get to in his reign.
大卫在他的遗言当中虽然讲了很多，但是还是有一些他没有能够预料到。
Three people that Solomon is supposed to deal with, and in these cases, it's because David wasn't able, for whatever reason, to do this during his reign.
所以有3个人， 是大卫王在他的生命当中想去处理，但是他已经没有时间，也无法去处理。
One is easy. He needs to show loyalty to the sons of Barzillai. Barzillai had helped David.
有一个就是跟随大卫的
Barzillai. Verse 7.
跟随大卫的一个巴西来的粽子，基列人巴西来的粽子。
I assume that was easy to do because all he had to do is continue showing favor to them. I'm sure he did, and we're going to hear more about this.
因为这些巴西来的粽子在大卫的征战当中帮助过大卫，所以大卫就跟他说：“你要继续的恩待这些人。”
The other two are much harder.
另外两个人是比较困难的。
The first is the infamous Joab.
一个是大卫的手下的元帅，就是约雅。
Now, Joab was a brutal, self-serving, cold-blooded killer.
约雅实际上是一个非常自私的一个冷血的一个杀手。
Anyone who got in his way, he simply eliminated.
任何人挡住他的道，他就会除掉这些。
He had murdered two people.
他杀了两个人。
The first one was Abner.
有一个就是亚尼尔。
And that you could almost understand, but it's still not right.
尽管可以理解，但是还是不合理。
See, Abner had killed Joab's brother Asahel.
当他杀了这个亚尼尔，是杀了约雅的兄弟。
But it was during the war, and Abner specifically tried to turn him away, and he had to kill him in self-defense.
所以当时在和大卫的征战当中，那个约雅他的兄弟和亚尼尔面对面的要杀这个亚尼尔，所以亚尼尔为了自卫才杀了约雅的兄弟。
So while we might feel a little bit of sympathy for Joab, still, give the guy a break.
虽然约雅的兄弟被杀了，我们会对他有一点同情，但是依然不可以原谅他所做的。
Now, at the time, David was very unhappy about this, but he wasn't politically strong enough to stand up against the commander of his army, Joab.
尽管大卫当时对约雅的做法非常的不喜欢，因为他杀了这个亚尼尔，但是他在当时是没有什么可做的。
So he had left Joab in command of his army.
因为约雅是他的部队的元帅，所以他依然让他作为他部队的元帅。
If this wasn't bad enough, Joab murdered again.
但是这个没有停止约雅继续的在杀了另外一个人。
See, it was Joab that decided to kill Absalom, David's son.
所以是约雅又杀了另外一个以帖的儿子亚玛撒。
After David had given specific instructions, do not kill him.
大卫王明确的对约雅说：“你不能杀以帖的儿子亚玛撒。”
Well, Joab did it anyway.
但是约雅还是把他杀了。
Because Joab felt that was the best political thing to do.
约雅认为这是在从政治上对他是最有利的，除掉了他的政敌。
Well, understandably, David was very, very upset.
所以我们可以理解到大卫对他的所行非常的不正。
So he effectively fired Joab and appointed Amasa instead.
所以他就把约雅除去了他的军衔，让这个亚玛撒作为他的代理。
That seems like a very reasonable thing to do to me.
这个对大卫来说是应该非常合理的。
But Joab didn't like not being in control, so he flat out murders Amasa so he can get his job back.
所以约雅就对亚玛撒作为他的代理，他作为军队的首领，非常的愤怒，他就把亚玛撒杀了。
But once again, David has no one to command his army.
但是大卫当时并不是完完全全的掌握了全部的军权。
And after this, I don't think anyone was stepping forward to take Joab's place. They didn't really want to end up dead.
当时也没有其他的人有这样的胆量来代替约雅作为军队的首领。
So David is not happy, but he's stuck with Joab as commander.
所以在当时，大卫只能让约雅作为他军队的元首。
So he tells Solomon, "You're new king. You might be able to do something where I could not. Make sure that you call him to account for his crimes."
所以大卫在临终前就对所罗门说：“虽然我无法对约雅做任何事，但是你必须要让他为杀死这两个人负他最终的责任。”
In fact, he specifically asks Solomon to, in verse 6, to act according to your wisdom. Do not let his gray hairs go down to the grave.
所以大卫甚至跟所罗门说：“你必须要用你神赐给你的智慧，不要让这个人，这个白头发的人让他的血不归到他的头上。”
Apparently, David thinks that Solomon is already a wise man.
所以在当时大卫给临终遗言的时候，他认为所罗门已经具有了足够的智慧。
The second person that David wants Solomon to deal with is a man by the name of Shimei.
第二个人，大卫希望所罗门能够处理的就叫示每。
Now, Shimei had been a part of the house of Saul.
示每原来是扫罗手下的一个官员。
So when God installed David as king instead of Saul, people who were part of his household were understandably a bit upset.
所以当耶和华膏大卫作为君王的时候，扫罗手下的这些官员，他们非常的愤怒。
Shimei was the leader of this pro-Saul faction.
所以示每在当时是在扫罗手下反对大卫的那一方面的首领。
So when David was running from Absalom, Shimei came along and cursed him and called him out because God put David in power instead of Saul.
所以当大卫从他的儿子押沙龙逼迫他的时候逃跑的时候，这个示每就用恶毒的话语来咒诅大卫，说他不配有这样的权利，尽管神膏大卫作为这个以色列国度的王。
At the time, David's men were extremely offended and wanted to kill him.
所以大卫手下的人也非常的愤怒，就希望能够杀掉示每。
David said no.
但大卫说：“我们不能杀。”
He said, "My own son is trying to kill me. Maybe what does it matter if this guy doesn't like me either?"
他说：“大卫说我的儿子就要来杀我，那么这个人他只是咒诅我。”
Then, when the rebellion was over and David was coming back, Shimei had met David with a coalition of 1,000 men.
所以当大卫平息了叛乱，回到耶路撒冷的时候，示每带了一些人去迎接大卫。
Once again, David's men hadn't forgotten the grudge and they wanted to execute him now.
但是那时候大卫手下的人没有忘记他当时的怨言，也还是很想把他除掉。
Once again, though, David says no.
又一次，大卫王说：“我不想杀你。”
Not because he trusts Shimei.
并不是因为大卫王信任这个事，
Rather because he doesn't think it's the right time to kill anyone, no matter what they have done.
因为在当时大卫王认为杀任何人或者他的手下或者投诚他的人是一个不明智的决定。
He needs to get Israel on his side again, and executing leaders is not the best way to do that.
所以他希望在以色列人中确立他自己的威望，所以他不想杀任何人。
So he takes an oath before God that he will not execute Shimei.
所以他在神的面前向神起誓，他不会杀掉示每。
That means even later on, once his power is totally restored, he can't kill Shimei now. He took an oath and he has to keep it.
所以他在他重新取得了政权以后，他承诺了大卫承诺了他的向神的诺言，没有杀示每。
David is a man who follows God. If he makes a promise, he keeps it.
大卫在神的面前是蒙福的，因为他向神承诺了什么，他必须要遵守他承诺。
But Shimei still resents the house of David. He's still a very powerful man.
但是示每仍然对大卫有怨言，而且在政治上依然是有势力。
He could very well splinter the kingdom underneath Solomon if something is not done.
他也可能在所罗门王的治下，对他的政权有这个叛逆的危险。
So once again, David asks his son Solomon, deal with him. He deserves death, but I was not able to kill him because I promised him I wouldn't.
所以大卫王在临终前就跟所罗门讲，尽管示每他罪有应得，但是我在神面前立约不能杀他，但是你必须要对付这个人。
And once again, he says, you are a wise man, so I'm not going to tell you exactly how to do it. You choose.
所以大卫对所罗门说：“你是一个有智慧的人，我没办法告诉你怎么做，但是你必须决定当怎么去行。”
Well, it was shortly after that that David died.
但是大卫王讲完这些遗言，他就不做事。
And now all of the responsibility rests on the shoulders of young Solomon.
所以最终所有的责任都落在了年轻的所罗门的肩上。
Now, Solomon at this time would have been about 20 years old.
那个时候所罗门只有20岁。
And now he has to go about dealing with all these people that were against him. What is he going to do about it?
所以他要面对的是这些对他有背叛的这一群的有势力的人，他该怎么去做呢？
I know what Saul would have done.
我们知道扫罗会怎么做。
He would summarily have just executed everyone who even had a hint of possibly, maybe being against him and been done with it.
扫罗对他所有的政敌只用一个办法，即便他认为对方有可能对他有威胁，他就处决他。
After all, Saul had tried to kill David over and over again, and David was not against Saul.
尽管大卫都没有对扫罗有反叛，但是扫罗也不停地在追杀他。
Well, obviously, that would have been a very foolish and very wrong way to do things.
但是如果像扫罗这样做，很显然是不正确，也是不理智的。
But nevertheless, something has to be done.
但是无论如何，必须要做一些什么。
David is young and is not yet in total control of everything.
所罗门在那时候他很年轻，他还没有完全对这个国度有了全部的这个统治权。
If he doesn't take action, at some point he will lose the kingdom.
如果他一步做错以后，他就有可能失去对国家的控制。
But he promised Adonijah he would execute him if he proved to be a worthy man.
但是他向这个亚多尼亚承诺，他如果行事正直，他不会处决。
I'm thinking that Adonijah did not take his kid brother's threat seriously.
但是所罗门的兄弟亚多尼亚并没有认为所罗门说的话是认真的。
Otherwise, he never would have done what he did next.
所以如果是那样的话，他就不会做下面一件事情。
He still wants to be king, so he makes a deliberate ploy to be king.
所以他仍然对王位有这样的继续，所以他就做了一个阴谋的决定，来行出了他的第一步。
But he's smart enough to know he can't do it directly. He already tried that, and it dissipated.
所以他知道他刚开始已经有了这么一个可能性的努力，但是失败了，所以他要换一种方式来得到这个权利。
Instead, he decides he's going to take Abishag the Shunammite to wife.
所以他就是想娶这个大卫的使女，叫示面的使女。
Now, who is that, you might say?
就是大卫的使女，作为他自己的妻子。
During David's last years, because he was so frail, he couldn't get warm.
大卫在他年老临终的时候，他老觉得身上很冷。
Plus, I would imagine that because of his declining health, he required nearly constant care.
所以在他最后的身体每况愈下的健康每况愈下的时候，他需要有个人来照顾他。
His servants tried to help him, but it didn't work.
所以他的大臣们和周围的这些侍从用了所有的办法，也没有办法让他觉得身体能活起来。
So they suggest to the king that they look for a young, beautiful woman.
所以他们就建议大卫去寻找一个年轻的侍女来侍奉。
And she would effectively be his nurse.
所以最终那个侍女应该是成为他的贴身的这个照顾人。
And so she's not actually his wife. She is basically just his nurse. But she would have been viewed by the people of Israel as like one of David's concubines.
尽管他们所找的这个使女不是大卫的妻子，但是在以色列人看来，他们很有等同作为大卫的妻子的地位。
Now, Adonijah also has enough sense to know that if he goes directly to his brother and asks for this, that Solomon would understand something was up, and Adonijah probably would lose his life.
所以亚多尼亚说，他如果直接向所罗门求娶他父亲的这个使女呢，他可能所罗门会被激怒，要杀了他。
He knows Solomon has a good relationship with his mother, so he tries to go through Bathsheba.
所以亚多尼亚就想了个办法，就去找了这个所罗门的母亲巴示巴，来提出这个要求。
And while you might think Bathsheba would know what's going on, after all, she's been around the royal court for at least 20 years now.
我们可能会认为巴示巴应该对这个 他的请求的阴谋有所察觉，因为他在王宫也待了很长时间。
But apparently she totally misses the political play that Adonijah is making.
但是八十八全然的没有意识到这个亚多尼亚他所提出的请求背后的真正的政治上的动机和目的。
He goes to her and she's suspicious, but he reassures her he's not there for trouble.
所以当亚多尼亚来到八十八的面前的时候，他有些警惕，但是当交谈完了以后，他的警惕就消失了。
He asks that she request of Solomon that Abishag be given to him as wife.
所以亚多尼亚就向八十八提出，希望他能跟所罗门讲，能够娶这个大卫的使女，也就是书面的女子亚比煞作为他自己的妻子。
It seems to me Bathsheba totally believes that he is just making an innocent request.
所以八十八只是认为他也许只是生活上需要找一个妻子。
So she goes to her son, to King Solomon.
所以他就直接找到他的儿子所罗门。
And once again, Solomon shows his mother great respect.
所以所罗门对他的母亲是非常的尊重。
He is now king. Everyone must bow to him. Nobody has to stand in his presence. Everyone can be required to bow, even his mother, if he wishes.
所以尽管他已经是国王了，所有的人来到他面前必须俯伏在地，包括他的母亲。
But clearly, he's not so much interested in protocol. He has great respect for his mother.
但是所罗门王是如此的尊重他的母亲。
He calls for another chair to be brought to put right beside him, and has his mother sit right there in the place of honor.
所以所罗门王也向他的母亲八十八行了礼，同时摆了一张椅子在王座的边上，请他的母亲坐在那里。
Now, they probably talk about more than one thing, but we're only interested in this one thing, this one question.
尽管有很多的事情，但是我们会注重在下面所要发生的。
She says, I have one small request. Please do not deny me.
所以这个八十八就跟所罗门说，他有一个很小的要求，请不要拒绝。
Solomon, thinking it is going to be a small request, says, sure, fine, what do you want?
所以所罗门认为可能是一件不起眼的小事，所以就说没问题，你讲就行。
So she makes the request that Adonijah had asked her to tell. Give Abishag to your brother Adonijah his wife.
所以八十八就跟所罗门说，他说你的兄弟亚多尼亚想娶王的大卫的使女八十八作为他的妻子。
And once again, we see that indeed Solomon is already proven to be a wise man. He sees through what is really going on immediately.
所以这里看到所罗门王已经具备了他当有的智慧，所以他一眼就看穿了亚多尼亚的意图。
Now, he'd already promised his brother, if you prove to be a worthy man, you will not die, but otherwise.
所以他曾经跟他的兄弟亚多尼亚说了，如果你证明你生活的是一个正直的，那我就不会对你有任何的杀念。
Well, clearly Adonijah hadn't taken him seriously, so he's going to carry out his threat.
所以亚多尼亚并没有把这件事情看得非常的严重和认真，所以他需要承担其中的后果。
He sends out what is effectively the executioner, and Adonijah is killed.
所以所罗门就派出了他的臣仆，直接把亚多尼亚就处决了。
Well, now that the leader of this conspiracy is clearly not done trying to be king, he's got to take care of the rest of it too.
当然，这一个人并没有解决所有他政敌潜在的威胁，他需要解决剩下的那些敌人，也就是大卫王在临终前告诉他。
So the next guy on the list is a cold-blooded Joab.
另外一个就是叫押沙，就是那个军队的元首。
Now, Joab is a double murderer.
约雅他是杀了2个人的这个犯罪分子。
So Solomon carries out justice. He is killed.
所以所罗门也就行了他公义当行的，就杀了这个约雅。
But what about Abiathar, the priest?
但是这个亚比亚他呢？亚比亚他是当时的大祭司。
Abiathar had killed no one.
亚比亚他并没有，亚比亚他并没有杀任何人。
Now, King Saul had Abiathar's entire family executed on a tiny, tiny pretext.
实际上，扫罗因为他对亚比亚沙家族，他自己想象当中对他的威胁，就杀了亚比亚沙和所有祭司的全家。
Abiathar had done something much more treasonous. He'd actually taken part in a conspiracy.
所以对于亚比亚撒来说，他没有犯任何的罪，对所罗门来讲，他都不在这个亚当尼亚他们这个背叛的这群人当中。
Solomon shows himself a much wiser man. He does not have Abiathar executed at all.
所以所罗门也显示出他自己的智慧，作为一个正直的人，他就完全没有对他起任何的杀人。
However, Abiathar has taken part in the conspiracy and is still a major threat to Solomon and his throne.
所以尽管亚比亚他并没有对所罗门产生威胁，但是他依然是一种潜在的政治力量。
So even though Solomon has good grounds to execute him, he doesn't, and sends him to his home in Anathoth instead.
所以尽管所罗门有足够的理由来除掉亚比亚他，但是他没有，只是把他驱逐出耶路撒冷。
This way, Abiathar will be no threat because he'll be out of his
所以对于亚比亚撒来说，他就依然回到他的家乡，对所罗门就不构成任何的威胁，但是他也失去了他大祭司的职位。
And already we see Solomon is not going to be your typical king. He is going to be merciful.
所以我们看到所罗门王他是一个智慧的王，他也显示出了他对他敌人的怜悯。
And the last and toughest case to deal with was Shimei.
最后一个就是示每。
Shimei had the good sense to not take part in that rebellion with Adonijah.
所以示每对所罗门来说，他也不是这么和亚多尼亚一样，是他密谋者的这个核心成员。
But he is very much still a threat. He still hates the house of David.
但是他依然在心里面对大卫王的国度和他的后裔有这样的一个反感的情绪。
Solomon could straight up have him executed, but he doesn't.
所以所罗门有足够的理由也将他除掉，但是他没有。
Instead, he calls Shimei to him and tells him, "Build a house here in Jerusalem, and the day you leave Jerusalem, you will die."
所以所罗门就告诉这个示每说：“你在耶路撒冷建一座房子，你在房子里面不能够出耶路撒冷。当你迈出耶路撒冷这个边界之时，你就是你的生命结束之日。”
Shimei agrees.
示每也同意了，
But I don't think he took Solomon seriously.
但是他也没有把所罗门的对他讲的话看得非常的认真。
See, 3 years later, a couple of Shimei's servants ran away.
就3年以后，示每有2个这个奴隶从他家里逃跑。
So, he gets on his donkey, he goes down to Gath, gets the servants, and comes back.
所以示每就拉了个骡子，骑了个骡子走出耶路撒冷，把他的2个奴隶从外抓回来。
I can't imagine anyone wanting to die with that.
所以我无法想象有任何人只是为了抓2个奴隶而引起自己生命的死亡。
So clearly, he doesn't think Solomon is going to carry out his threat or be able to carry out his threat.
所以他不认为所罗门王认为他是一个危险，并且认为他对他的承诺是认真的。
How wrong he is.
他是如此的愚蠢。
So Solomon calls him before him and did exactly what he promised Shimei he would do.
所以所罗门王就对示每做了他对示每所做的承诺。
Well, now all of the conspirators and people who might cause trouble for Solomon have been dealt with, not all of them executed, unlike most ancient kings. And yet the problem is all dealt with.
所以所罗门在这个以后就解决了他所有的政敌，但不是所有的人都被杀了，但是他必须要解除他在政治上的威胁。
So you might think at this point, problem's done. Now the rest of Solomon's kingship is going to be peace and easy. He's going to develop the fabulous wealth that he knows about.
所以在这个时候，我们可以想到所罗门就说：“我的所有的事情都解决了，现在我可以欢欢喜喜过着平安的日子。”
But it's one thing simply carrying out your father's dying requests and the things that absolutely have to be done. It's another thing to handle the day-to-day responsibility of an entire nation.
但是所罗门必须要想到，大卫王还要告诉他，他必须要每天面对的是他国民和臣民的诸多的政事和琐事。
He does have some glimmers of wisdom. After all, he greatly respects his parents, and that helps.
尽管他从他的父母那里学到了很多的知识，所以他认为也是这样的智慧能够帮助他。
But that's not enough.
但是不足够。
See, Solomon loved the Lord and walked with God too.
所罗门也爱神，也愿意遵守他的律法和典章。
But he felt totally overwhelmed.
但是他觉得自己有的时候是没有办法来遵守自己所做的事情，力不从心。
Can you blame him? He's only in his 20s and now he's got to rule an entire nation.
我们没有办法去谴责他，因为他只有20岁，他要来处理这么以色列全国的政事。
So he goes to the high place at Gibeon and offers sacrifices there and makes a request to God.
所以他就去了一个祭奠的地方，在那里献了1000头的燔祭。
His prayer is a model of how to pray and ask God for something that is burdening your heart.
所以他就对神做了一个祷告，这个祷告是几乎是所有向神祷告的一个典范。
In chapter 3, beginning in verse 5.
在这个列王记上第3章的第5节开始。
At Gibeon, the Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream by night, and God said, "Ask what I shall give you." And Solomon said, "You have shown great and steadfast love to your servant David, my father, because he walked before you in faithfulness and righteousness and uprightness of heart towards you. You have kept for him this great and steadfast love, and given him a throne to sit on a son to sit on his throne this day. Now, O Lord my God, you have made your servant king in place of David, my father. Though I am but a little child, I do not know how to come out or go in. And your servant is in the midst of your people, whom you have chosen a great people, too many to be numbered or counted for multitude. Give your servant therefore an understanding mind to govern your people, that I may discern between good and evil. For who is able to govern this your great people?"
所以所罗门对神在祭坛上，在祭奠，耶和华在梦中显现，神说：“你无论求什么，我必赐给你。”所罗门说：“你仆人我父亲大卫以诚实、公义和正直，在心里在你面前行事为人，你就以极大的慈爱待他，你又为他留存这极大的慈爱，赐给他一个儿子坐在王位上，正如今日一样。耶和华我的神啊，现在你使仆人接续我父亲大卫做王，但我还年轻，不知道应当怎样处事。仆人往往在你拣选的子民中，这些子民很多，多的不能数算，所以求你赐给仆人一颗辨明的心，可以判断你的子民，能辨别是非，因为谁能判断你这众多的子民呢？”
God is pleased with Solomon's request.
神对所罗门的祷告非常的喜悦。
Solomon had asked for wisdom, and that means more than just general knowledge.
所罗门所求的是智慧，是超过了知识。
See, when the ancient Jews thought of wisdom, they thought most of all of wisdom for life, knowing how to live, knowing what to do in life.
在犹太人的律法当中，他们所求的智慧是怎么样去生活，怎么样更好的去生存。
Solomon wants administrative wisdom. He wants to know how to organize all of these millions and millions of people. How on earth is he to handle this huge administrative task?
而所罗门所求的智慧是治理国家和治理民众的智慧，让他如何分辨民众的心和他们的是非。
A king was also responsible to judge cases when people came to him to have their cases decided. And so he wants discernment so he can figure out what he's supposed to do with all of these people coming in and giving him these tough cases to decide. And he has to know what is right and what is wrong.
所罗门也求神给他的智慧，让他可以在民事诉讼当中明辨是非，可以判断这些民的所求，让他怎么样能够应付，做一个明智和智慧的决定。
And as these people come to him saying, "We have this problem, decide for us who is right and what should we do?"
当这些民众来到他面前问他，这是我们的问题，请你告诉我们当怎么做，请你告诉我们当解决这样的问题，他必须要面对这些。
And oftentimes he's standing there thinking, "I don't know."
很多的时候他说我不知道，我真的不知道。
Everyone's looking at me and wanting me to make a decision. I have no clue what the right thing to do here is.
所以很多时候我也不知道，我也没有任何的线索告诉你们应当怎么做。
That's what he wants.
这
He wants to know what to do.
他要求神告诉他当做什么。
God's answer to him, "You could have asked for anything. You could have been selfish."
神对他说：“你实际上可以要求其他的，你可以用你自私的想法来要求我给你做什么事情。
You could have asked me to kill your enemies for you.
你可以要求我来杀掉你的 仇敌和你的阵营，
then I would have done it.
我就会帮助你。
You could have asked me to make you fabulously rich.
你可以向我求，让你能够变得非常的富有，
And I would have done it.
我会帮助你。
But you wanted wisdom, and that's the right thing to ask for.
但是你却向我求智慧，这是一个明智，是一个正确的要求。
Therefore, God says, I'm not just going to give you a little wisdom. I am going to give you enormous wisdom so great no one else is going to be able to equal you.
所以神承诺所罗门说：“我不光给你智慧，我给你的智慧是超过所有过去、现在以及以后所有列王的智慧。”
And I'm also going to give you what you didn't ask for, that wealth that you didn't ask me to give you. You're now going to be so rich, there's going to be no one on earth richer than you.
我不光给你智慧，我也还给你额外的就是富足，让世界上没有人能够和你的富足相比。
Now, then, just as today, Israel's a small nation.
现在我们看以色列是个很小的国家，
But during the time Solomon lived, all the really big nations were all of them going through difficult times, for those, a dark time for those centuries. So, yeah, Solomon was pretty much the richest king, became the richest king that he would have ever heard of.
但是在当时，在世界上有很多小的国家，特别是在中东或者其他埃及遍布那个地区，没有一个国家能够和以色列所罗门的国家的富裕相比。
Well, now, did it work?
而且这件事情成就了，
Was Solomon wise? Of course, we know the answer is yes.
所以是不是所罗门得到智慧呢？当然，答案是是的。
And we know that we're told the story of an impossibly difficult case that he has to decide.
所以有一个诉讼案就反映出所罗门的智慧。
And like most really tough cases, it's a sad story.
所以尽管这是一个很困难的一个诉讼案子，但是也是一个很相对来讲比较悲伤的一个案子。
Involving some really, really messed up people.
这件案件能够看到很多的时候，人实实在在的是很困惑的。
Two prostitutes came before the king.
两个妓女来到所罗门的面前。
So already we know these are not exactly reliable people.
我们也知道他们对当时妓女来讲是没有什么可信誉的。
Now they lived together and they each had a son.
他们
About
两
the
个
same
住
time.
在一栋房子里面，他们两个各自有自己的孩子，两个儿子，一个人一个儿子。
Unfortunately, one of them had rolled on her son in the night and he died.
有一个妇女，她晚上呢，她就压到她的孩子身上，那个孩子就死掉了。
So the woman doing the talking said that that's what happened, but in the night the other woman took her dead son and swapped it for my live one.
所以这两个妇女来到所罗门面前，有一个人就说，他的孩子死了，但是呢，他把我的孩子换到了他的身边，把他的那个死的孩子换给我。
The other woman says, no, mine is the live one, yours is the dead one.
所以另外一个妇女说，没有，这个活的孩子是我的，是那个死的孩子是你自己的。
Now, there are no witnesses.
而且当时没有任何的目击。
He can't ask anyone else to tell them what they saw so he can figure out whose it really is.
我们没有办法再找一个人能够确认到底谁是对谁是错，这个活的孩子或者那个死的孩子归谁。
And he can't really rely on the testimony of these people either. These are not reliable women.
所以也没有办法完全凭着他们所讲的就相信他们，因为他们本身就没有任何的信誉可言。
And of course, he can't do things we can do today, like DNA tests and whatever. They haven't been invented yet. So he has absolutely no evidence.
所以现在我们可以用 DNA 来确定谁是谁的孩子，但是在当时来说是完全没有办法做到。
So he calls for a sword.
所以他们就来到所罗门的面前求公义。
He lifts up the sword and said, here's my judgment.
所以所罗门就拿了一把刀来到他面前，他说：“这是我的决定。”
Split the child in half and give one half to one woman and one half to the other.
所以他说：“我把这孩子一劈两半，一半给一个妇人，一半给另一个妇人。”
Well, the woman whose child it really was loves her child.
其中有一个妇人，她是这个活着的孩子的真实的母亲，她爱这个孩子。
So she begs the king, oh no, don't give the other woman the child, don't kill him.
所以他就说：“不要劈这个孩子，把这个孩子给那个妇人。”
And the other woman is so cold. She says, let it be no one's, just kill it.
所以另外一个妇人心中依然的刚硬和寒冷，她说：“没关系，这个就把一人一半。”
How did he know that would happen?
谁知道到底会发生什么？
I mean, I can really understand the woman whose child it really was loving her son. That makes sense. But how do you know then the other woman would be so cold she wouldn't even care?
所以我们可以理解那个孩子的真实的母亲，她是如此爱的孩子，她不愿意让孩子受了伤害。但是我们怎么能够理解另外一个妇人的心肠是如此的冷漠和恶毒，让这个孩子能劈成两半？
God did what he said. He gave Solomon an intuitive understanding of human nature, even in this situation so far removed from his everyday experience.
所以神给了所罗门有如此的智慧，他能够洞察到人心和人性，来断绝这个案子。
This is exactly the kind of wisdom that he was praying for, and he has it in abundance.
所以这就是智慧，就是所罗门向神所求的智慧，而且神帮助他拥有了这样的智慧。
And of course, everyone hears about his wisdom and is in awe of it, wouldn't you be?
所以很多人听到了所罗门的智慧，就向他产生了敬畏的心。
Don't try to pull the wool over the eyes of Solomon. It's not going to work. You better tell him the truth. He will know.
当时的人就很惧怕在所罗门面前说谎话，因为他们知道所罗门的智慧会帮助他认清、澄清是非和判断是非。
But more than this, Solomon also asked for administrative wisdom.
除此之外，所罗门也向神求他治理国家的智慧。
And at the beginning of chapter 4, there's this long list of impronounceable names, which I'm not going to bother reading through because of lack of time.
所以在第4章，列出了所罗门所钦派的那些大臣，他形成了一个完整的政府的体系。
And to be nice to my translator.
我不愿意把每个名字都读出来，因为太长了。
But the point of this long, really difficult list of names is that Solomon was a gifted administrator. He organized everything so that it worked and it hummed.
这一长串的名字和复杂的名字，体现了所罗门他在治理国家上的智慧。
More than this, we also see that Solomon became fabulously rich.
所以，同时我们也看到了所罗门王后来变得是非常的让国家和他自己变得非常的富裕。
We're given a list of what his entire household and servants required to eat in a single day.
这个圣经上讲到了，就是一天所罗门和他所有的臣仆以及他的宫殿里的这个需求的量。
It included 30 cows, 100 sheep, plus a lot of wild animals and a lot of flour.
他有将近5000个他们有将近5000个牛羊，还有12000个马匹，还有12000个马的兵来帮助他。
He also kept for himself an enormous stable of horses, 40,000.
所以他有14000个马兵和很多的这个马匹为他所用。
So God promised him wealth, and he was rich.
所以神承诺他的富裕，他确实也很富裕。
More than this, his wisdom was wider than just the two specific kinds of wisdom he asked for.
所以这些所有的智慧都是他求神所赐给他的。
He's given that kind of wisdom for life, and the author of Kings wants to measure it for us, but we can't measure this kind of wisdom.
所以他的智慧是如此的丰盛，所以《列王记》的作者想能够衡量他都没有办法衡量所罗门的智慧。
So he compares it with wise people that his readers would have understood were wise men.
所以他在这里提到的就是所罗门的智慧能够在这个世界上能够分辨是非、明辨是非。
I've given a list of several names of really wise people. We know very little about any of these four people. It's Ethan, Heman, and Calcol, and Darda. That's in verse 31.
所以他这个为了衡量所罗门的智慧，他圣经当中就列王记就列出了当时非常有智慧的一些人，让他们所有的智慧加在一起也比不上所罗门的智慧。
The point is, he was wiser than all of those people.
所以圣经上讲的所罗门的智慧超过了所有这些人的总和。
But he didn't just know what to do, he knew how to communicate it. He spoke 3,000 proverbs.
所以除此之外，所罗门还写了3000个这个箴言。
Which is a short, pithy saying. So he would take his wisdom and life and he condensed them into these little, short, memorable statements that everyone could remember.
所以他把很多智慧的语言把它精简成一些很短的短语，一共有3000句的箴言。
So he was gifted at at explaining and communicating his wisdom to other people, not just knowing what to do himself.
所以他把这些箴言列出来，不光是他自己用这些智慧知道怎么做，他也愿意和世人分享，让大家一起明辨是非。
Plus, he was a gifted poet. He wrote 1,005 songs.
而且他也是一个非常著名的诗人，他写了有1005首的诗。
Oh, and on top of all this, he was one of the greatest scientists of his day, too. He was an expert in biology and zoology, plants and animals.
所以他也是一个非常有学识的这个科学家，他论了很多的植物、动物，在他的书当中。
Yes, Solomon was wise.
所以所罗门是非常的有智慧。
But why was Solomon so wise?
但是为什么所罗门这么有智慧？
It wasn't just because he worked hard. Oh, I'm sure he did.
不光是他很勤奋，当然我们知道他一定会很勤奋。
It wasn't just because he respected his parents, although I think that's important.
也是看到他这么有智慧，他求神给他儿子的智慧。
It's because he knew where the real source of wisdom is.
更主要的是，他知道这些智慧的源头是什么。
He knew that all wisdom really comes from God.
他知道所有智慧的源头是从神来的。
So if you want to be wise, you've got to go to the one who is, who has it.
要想成为一个智者，你必须要找到智慧的源头。
Well, now we're not Solomon, so God's not going to necessarily make us the richest people on earth.
虽然我们知道我们不能够求这些，神也不会让我们成为世界最富有的人。
But the promise of receiving wisdom when he asks for it, we can have that too.
但是我们可以具有的是向神求智慧。
James chapter 1 verse 5 says that if any man lacks wisdom, let him ask from God, who gives to everyone liberally. He does not reproach.
所以在雅各书当中写到，你们中间若有人缺少智慧，就求那赐予众人也不斥责人的神，主就必赐。
That's the promise from God that if you don't know what to do,
当我们不知道该怎么做的时候，我们向神求。
you have a life decision to make and you're not sure which one is the right one.
你在生活中遇到一些是非或者无法明辨的时候，向神去求。
You should do all the sensible things that you should do when you're faced with a decision like this.
我们需要有这样的一个能力，向神求来在生活中做当做的决定。
You think through what does the Bible have to say on this subject, because it is a source of wisdom.
我们可以看看圣经当中有没有类似的言语章节或者事件能够帮助我们明辨，因为圣经也是智慧。
You should ask older, wiser people who have gone through this before. They might have some experience from life they can share with you.
你可以问那些有同样经历的长者和智者，也许他们会给我们一些建议。
And you should also pray and ask God to give you wisdom so that you may know what the right thing to do is.
最重要的是，我们要向神求智慧，求神告诉我们什么是一个正确的决定。
I have found that when I pray for wisdom, often God will bring to my mind greater clarity so that I can figure out what I'm supposed to do in this situation.
每当我向神求智慧的时候，我就会觉得神会给我在我的思想当中给我一个清晰的思路，让我的头脑清醒，来决定什么是对的，应该去做。
God really does give wisdom to those who ask it.
神确实给那些向他求智慧的人赐给他智慧。
Let us pray.
让我们一起祷告。
Heavenly Father, God of all wisdom,
您在天上的父，那个智者的源头。
Lord, oftentimes in our lives we're perplexed, we wonder what to do.
我们的生活当中充满了复杂和不确定的因素，我们常常都有疑问，我们该怎么去做？
Perhaps we are faced with a new experience.
也许我们缺少这个经历，或者我们没有信心。
And so we don't know what to do because we've never done anything like this before.
也许我们不知道怎么做，因为我们从来没有做过这些事。
Perhaps we're faced with a hard choice and it really doesn't look like any of the options is the right one, but we have to choose something.
当我们看到这些问题的时候，我们不知道，没有任何的解答，我们也不知道该怎么去做。
Lord, may we not forget to seek you for wisdom.
主啊，求你帮助我们，让我们可以从你那里求智慧。
We We ask these things in Jesus' name.
我们祷告奉主耶稣基督的圣名。